She adopted the child he saved and he married her to keep the secret. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The night rain poured over St. Joseph's Hospital like a gray curtain, blurring the ambulance lights into streaks of red and blue. Inside the quiet hallway, Ethan Ward stood soaked to the bone, his tailored suit clinging to him like armor cracked open. Only hours ago, he had been hailed as a hero on the evening news, the billionaire who pulled a child out of a burning car on the interstate. They had called it bravery. But Ethan knew the truth. It was guilt that had driven him into the flames. He had caused the accident that killed her parents. The doctors called the girl Hope. She was maybe 5 years old, with big brown eyes and a hospital bracelet too loose for her wrist. She had no surviving family. No one claimed her. And the law was clear: a single man, even a wealthy one, could not easily adopt a child without a stable family structure. That was when the door opened, and a soft voice broke through the sterile hum. "You are still here," she said. Claire Bennett, the volunteer teacher from the pediatric ward, was holding a paper cup of coffee. Her sweater was thin, her shoes wet from rushing between shifts. She had spent nights reading stories to the orphaned kids, her patience endless. Ethan turned toward her, his face shadowed under the flickering hospital light. "They will not let me keep her," he murmured, his voice heavy. "The system says a child needs a family, not just money." Claire hesitated, clutching the cup tighter. "Then what are you going to do?" He looked at her for a long moment. The thought had been circling in his mind like thunder. "Marry me," he said finally, the words falling quietly but carrying a strange force. Claire blinked, sure she had misheard. "What?" Ethan stepped closer. "Marry me. Think of it as a contract. You love those kids, and I need a family to protect her. It would not have to be real, just legal." The hallway went silent except for the beeping monitors behind the doors. Claire's breath caught. She barely knew this man beyond the headlines. Billionaire philanthropist. Ruthless CEO. A stranger asking for a paper marriage under fluorescent lights. "That is insane," she whispered. "You do not even know me." Ethan's voice softened. "I know you care. I saw you hold her hand when she woke up crying. I saw you stay long after your shift ended. That is all I need to know." Claire looked away, torn between disbelief and compassion. She had nothing left to lose: her apartment lease ending, her finances drained by her father's hospital bills. Yet something in his eyes, raw, tired, almost pleading, made her pause. "If I say yes," she asked quietly, "what happens after?" Ethan exhaled, his gaze falling to the little girl's window. "Then Hope gets to stay with people who will not let her be alone again." The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the glass. Claire's heartbeat echoed it, wild and unsteady. She looked at the child asleep beyond the window, small fingers clutching a stuffed bear. Then she turned back to Ethan. "You said it is just a contract?" "Just a contract," he repeated. 6 months. Until the adoption clears." She nodded once, almost to herself. "Fine. But remember this, Mr. Ward, children can feel lies." He almost smiled, a flicker of something human breaking through his guilt. "Then I will try not to lie." And in that moment, under the hum of hospital lights and the scent of antiseptic, their fates quietly intertwined: two strangers about to build a family neither of them believed in, bound not by love, but by a promise made for a little girl named Hope. The next morning, the city woke under a pale winter sun, the kind that never truly warmed the glass towers. Ethan Ward stood before the tall courthouse steps, his reflection sharp in the marble doors. His suit was dry now, but his eyes looked heavier. Claire Bennett arrived minutes later, hair pulled back, wearing the same worn coat from the hospital. She looked at him with quiet resolve. No flowers, no guests, no music. Just a lawyer, 2 signatures, and a promise that did not belong to love. When the judge stamped the papers, the sound echoed through the empty room like the closing of a vault. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Ward," the clerk said with polite indifference. Claire gave a small nod, the reality sinking in. On paper, she was now the wife of one of the most powerful men in the city. In her heart, she was just a caretaker for a little girl named Hope. They walked out in silence. Outside, the cold wind swept through the courthouse steps, tossing Claire's hair into her face. Ethan glanced at her, his tone controlled. "The driver will take you to the penthouse. It will be safer there." Claire blinked. "Penthouse? It is just for appearances," he added quickly. "A home inspection for the adoption board is due next week. They will expect to see us living together." The words felt transactional, stripped of emotion. Claire hesitated but followed him into the sleek black car waiting at the curb. The city blurred past in streaks of steel and glass until the car stopped in front of a high-rise that seemed to pierce the clouds. Inside the penthouse, everything gleamed: marble floors, glass walls, and silence heavy enough to feel like judgment. Claire set down her small suitcase near the door, her eyes scanning the cold perfection. "This place does not look like a home," she murmured. Ethan replied quietly, "It used to." For a fleeting moment, pain flickered across his face, but he turned away before she could ask. The housekeeper, an older woman named Mrs. Grant, appeared, her posture respectful but cautious. "Mr. Ward, the guest room is ready." Ethan nodded. "No. Make it the master suite. We have guests coming for the evaluation." Claire looked at him, startled, but he avoided her gaze. Later that evening, the penthouse filled with the faint scent of cinnamon and the soft laughter of a child. Hope was finally discharged from the hospital, small and fragile in her new pink jacket. Claire knelt down to button it properly, her voice tender. "You look perfect." The child's big brown eyes lifted to Ethan. "Are you my daddy now?" The question hung in the air, piercing through every pretense. Ethan knelt slowly, meeting her gaze. "Yes, sweetheart," he said softly. "If you will have me." Hope smiled a shy, unguarded smile that melted the chill of the entire room. Claire's heart tightened. For the first time since the accident, Ethan looked almost human. That night, as Hope slept in her new room filled with toys she barely touched, Claire stood by the window, watching the city below. The streets glittered like veins of light, but the silence behind her was deafening. "You do not have to keep pretending around me," she said quietly, without turning. Ethan stood a few feet away, sleeves rolled, glass of water in hand. "Pretending? That this is just business. You are trying too hard to sound like it means nothing." He paused, jaw tightening. "Because meaning something would make it harder when this ends." Claire turned to face him. "And what happens when she calls you daddy for real?" His expression faltered, but he said nothing. Outside, thunder rumbled far away, as if the world itself knew that this fragile arrangement was already starting to tremble. In the corner of the living room, the little girl's drawing sat on the tablet, a stick figure family under a yellow sun, 3 hands holding each other. Beneath it, in uneven crayon letters, she had written one word: family. Days turned into weeks, and the paper marriage began to take on the rhythm of real life. Every morning, Claire helped Hope with breakfast before Ethan's driver arrived to take him downtown. The little girl would wave from the kitchen window, her laughter echoing through the glass, while Ethan lifted a hand in quiet acknowledgement before disappearing into the storm of meetings and deals. The penthouse that once felt like a showroom began to carry traces of warmth: Hope's drawings taped on the fridge, a vase of wildflowers Claire bought from a street vendor, the faint sound of piano lessons drifting from the living room. But even in that soft domesticity, distance lingered between the adults. Ethan spent long nights in his office, light spilling under the door, his focus buried in spreadsheets and charity proposals. Claire, despite the comfort around her, still felt like a visitor in someone else's world. One evening, she brought Hope to the rooftop garden, an oasis of greenery high above the city. The air smelled faintly of rain and jasmine. Hope twirled near the fountain, holding the stuffed bear Ethan had given her. Claire smiled, but her gaze drifted to the penthouse windows. Ethan stood there, framed by the golden light, watching them. For a moment, she saw something raw in his expression, a longing he refused to name. Later that night, as thunder rolled across the skyline, Claire found herself knocking on his office door. He looked up, surprised. "Did something happen?" he asked. "Hope had a nightmare," she said softly. "She was calling for her parents." His shoulders stiffened. "She will be all right. Children forget faster than adults." "Do they?" Claire's tone was gentle but firm. "Or do they just hide it better?" Ethan leaned back, exhaustion evident. "I thought saving her would balance what I took." Claire frowned. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then looked at the rain sliding down the glass wall. "Her parents died in that crash. My car hit theirs. The press called it fate, but it was my fault. I took my eyes off the road for 1 second." Silence filled the room. Claire's breath caught. The truth landed like a weight between them, unexpected, heavy, and strangely human. "So this marriage," she whispered, "it was not just for her." Ethan met her gaze. "No. It was my penance." She looked at him, seeing not the billionaire the world admired but a man breaking under invisible guilt. "Hope does not need a saint," she said quietly. "She needs a father who can forgive himself." Ethan's voice broke slightly. "And what about you? What do you need, Mrs. Ward?" Claire hesitated, then replied, "A home that feels real, even if it started as a lie." Outside, the lightning split the clouds, illuminating the city for a heartbeat. In that flash, something between them shifted, an understanding neither could deny. The next morning, Hope woke early and padded to their room, climbing onto the bed with sleepy eyes. "Mommy, Daddy, wake up," she whispered, the words tumbling out so naturally that neither corrected her. Ethan froze for half a second, then smiled, placing a hand over the small one resting on his chest. Claire felt her heart tighten, tears threatening but unspoken. For the first time, the word family did not sound borrowed. That evening, when Claire tucked Hope into bed, the girl handed her a crayon drawing. It showed 3 stick figures again, but this time, under the word home, a red heart connected them all. Claire stood by the doorway long after Hope fell asleep, the soft hum of the city below blending with her heartbeat. Somewhere behind her, Ethan's voice came low. "Thank you," he said simply. She turned, meeting his gaze under the dim light. "For what?" "For reminding me that even broken things can belong somewhere." She smiled faintly. "Maybe we both needed to be fixed." He nodded, silent, his expression caught between gratitude and something deeper. The rain had stopped, but the world outside still glistened like a second chance waiting quietly on the horizon. By the time spring came, the contract marriage no longer felt like a business arrangement. The penthouse was filled with laughter, messy breakfast plates, and the sound of Hope's little feet running down the hallway. Ethan Ward found himself waking earlier, trading corporate meetings for pancake mornings, and staying late in the kitchen to help Claire clean up. There were still moments when guilt shadowed his eyes, but Claire had learned to see past it. One Saturday, as sunlight spilled through the wide glass windows, she placed a folder on the dining table. "The adoption board scheduled the home evaluation," she said. Ethan looked up from his coffee. "When?" "Next Friday. They want to see us together, as a family." He nodded. "Then we give them what they need." Claire hesitated. "Ethan, what if we just stop pretending? At least in front of them." He studied her quietly, the hint of a smile ghosting his lips. "You are asking me to tell the truth?" "No," she replied, holding his gaze. "I am asking you to live it." Later that evening, they prepared for the charity gala event hosted by his company every spring. It was the first time Claire would appear publicly as his wife. The thought made her palms sweat. Mrs. Grant, the housekeeper, helped her fasten the silver clasp of the gown Ethan had ordered, its soft blue fabric shimmering under the lights. When Ethan saw her step out, he went still. "You look," he began, then caught himself. "Perfect. The board will be impressed." Claire gave a small laugh. "I was hoping for something less strategic." His smile widened just slightly. "Beautiful, then." At the gala, chandeliers glittered above a sea of suits and champagne glasses. Cameras flashed, capturing Ethan Ward, the city's golden man, arriving with his quiet wife and the little girl everyone had heard about. Hope, wearing a tiny white dress, clung to Claire's hand until she saw the stage and darted forward. The crowd gasped as the child ran up the stairs and wrapped her arms around Ethan's legs. "Daddy," she shouted into the microphone. The room fell silent, and then laughter rippled through the guests. Claire's breath hitched, fear tightening her chest, but Ethan only bent down, lifted Hope into his arms, and smiled for the cameras. "Looks like I have been caught," he said lightly. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet my daughter." The applause that followed was thunderous. Reporters scribbled notes, flashes erupted, and Claire's eyes met his across the lights. Something unspoken passed between them, gratitude, relief, and maybe the faintest spark of love. Later, after the speeches and toasts, Claire found Ethan alone on the balcony overlooking the city. The night breeze tangled her hair as she stepped beside him. "You handled that well," she said softly. He chuckled. "It seems my daughter is better at public relations than I am." Claire leaned on the railing. "You could have denied it." "You did not." Ethan's voice dropped low. "Because for once, it felt true." She looked up at him, and the space between them felt fragile, like the edge of something waiting to happen. "Ethan," she whispered, "what happens when 6 months end?" He turned, eyes searching hers. "I do not know. Maybe we stop pretending. Maybe we start over." Her heart skipped. "As what?" He hesitated. "As whatever feels real." For a long moment, neither moved. The city lights stretched endlessly below, and Hope's laughter echoed faintly from inside. When Ethan finally reached for her hand, it was not part of the deal anymore. It was human, uncertain, and real. That night, as Claire tucked Hope into bed, the little girl asked in a sleepy voice, "Mommy, are you and Daddy happy?" Claire brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and smiled. "We are learning how to be." In the living room, Ethan sat staring at the contract on his desk, the same paper that had started it all. He folded it neatly, placed it inside a drawer, and whispered to himself, "No more pretending." Outside, rain began to fall again, gentle and rhythmic against the glass, washing away the lines between duty and love. The weeks that followed the gala were calm, almost deceptively so. Ethan Ward and Claire Bennett moved through the motions of a life that felt too fragile to name. Every morning began with Hope's laughter echoing through the penthouse, and every night ended with the soft clinking of dishes as they shared quiet dinners after she was asleep. But beneath the warmth, change was stirring. One afternoon, Ethan returned home earlier than usual. Claire was in the kitchen, her hair tied loosely, humming as she baked cupcakes for Hope's school fundraiser. The sight made him pause in the doorway. "You look happy," he said softly. She turned, surprised. "I am. I did not realize it had been so long since I felt that way." He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes for the first time in months. "You make this place feel alive." Before Claire could answer, the intercom buzzed. Mrs. Grant's voice came through, tense. "Mr. Ward, there is a visitor." "Mr. Hale from the board." Ethan's expression shifted instantly, professionalism replacing warmth. "Send him up." Minutes later, Daniel Hale, Ethan's oldest business partner, stepped into the penthouse with a polished smile that never reached his eyes. "Ethan," he greeted, "or should I say, Family Man of the Year." His gaze drifted to Claire, lingering with subtle condescension. "You must be the wife everyone is talking about." Claire straightened. It is nice to meet you, Mr. Hale. Likewise, he said smoothly. Though I must admit, this whole domestic image surprised me. Marriage, adoption, it is very strategic. Ethan's tone cooled. What do you want, Daniel? Hale smiled thinly. Just a friendly reminder. The board meeting next week will include a vote on the Carter merger. I hope your personal life does not distract from corporate duties. He glanced again at Claire. You know how fragile reputations can be. After he left, silence filled the room. Claire exhaled slowly. He thinks this marriage is a show. Ethan's jaw tightened. For now, let him think that. And what about you? She asked quietly. What do you think it is? Ethan looked at her, emotion flickering behind the restraint. I think it started as a lie that saved me from myself. Claire swallowed hard. And now? He hesitated. Now I am not sure how to live without it. That night, the tension lingered. As they prepared for the upcoming home evaluation, Ethan became distant again, buried in phone calls and legal files. Claire tried to focus on Hope's school project, a cardboard model of a family home, but her mind kept drifting. On the day of the evaluation, 2 social workers arrived. The penthouse gleamed, the scent of fresh flowers filling the air. Hope proudly showed them her drawings, pointing to one labeled, "My Mommy and Daddy." The social worker smiled warmly. She seems very loved. But just as relief began to soften Claire's chest, Daniel Hale's voice echoed from the hallway. He had arrived uninvited, clutching a folder. I am afraid I have evidence this marriage is not what it seems, he said smoothly. The room froze. Ethan's eyes darkened. Daniel, leave. Not before they see this, Hale replied, placing the folder on the table. Inside were photos, time-stamped, of Ethan and Claire signing their contract at the courthouse. Claire's face went pale. The lead social worker frowned. Is this true, Mr. Ward? Was your marriage arranged? Ethan looked between Claire, the officers, and Hope, who stood clutching her stuffed bear, confusion clouding her eyes. It was, he said quietly. But what happened after was not. The social worker exchanged glances with her partner. We will need to review this. As they left, Hope's small voice trembled. Did we do something bad? Claire knelt, hugging her tightly. No, sweetheart. You did everything right. When the door closed, Ethan turned to Claire, guilt heavy in his eyes. I will fix this. She shook her head, tears threatening. Ethan, this is not just about paperwork anymore. It is about trust. For the first time, he had no answer. The silence between them was louder than any storm. Outside, thunder rolled again, and Claire found herself staring at the rain-streaked window, wondering if the love they had barely begun to feel was strong enough to survive the truth. The scandal hit faster than either of them could prepare for. Within days, headlines screamed about Ethan Ward's contract marriage, painting Claire Bennett as a gold digger and him as a manipulator. Cameras gathered outside the penthouse gate, flashing like lightning every time a car passed. Claire stayed inside with Hope, keeping the curtains drawn. The child sensed the tension, her laughter quieter, her questions softer. Ethan had not slept in days, his phone buzzing nonstop with calls from the board and public relations. When he finally walked into the living room one morning, Claire was sitting on the couch with Hope asleep in her lap. She looked up at him, eyes red but calm. They are saying I used you, she whispered. That I did it for money. Ethan's expression darkened. You did nothing wrong. I will handle it. She shook her head slowly. It is not just about handling it, Ethan. People will not forget. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion pulling at his features. The board votes tomorrow. If they remove me, everything I built will fall apart. Claire looked at him quietly. Maybe some things need to fall apart to start over. He met her eyes, guilt cutting deep. I never meant for you to get hurt. Any of this. I know, she said softly. But meaning well does not erase what people believe. The next day, Ethan attended the board meeting. The conference room was filled with men in suits, eyes sharp as knives. Daniel Hale sat near the end of the table, smug confidence radiating. "Gentlemen," Hale began, "our chairman has compromised this company's reputation for a publicity stunt. His so-called marriage was nothing more than a transaction." Ethan rose to speak, voice steady despite the chaos inside him. "Yes, it started as a contract. But that child Hope was real. Her pain, her laughter, her need for a family, none of that was fake. Claire Bennett did not marry me for money. She saved me from becoming a man who only knew how to buy what he wanted." Murmurs rippled through the room. Hale smirked. "Nice speech, Ethan. But the media does not care about redemption arcs." "Maybe not," Ethan replied. "But the truth does not need to trend to be right." Outside the meeting, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. Ethan ignored them, walking past the flash of cameras straight into the rain. When he reached home, the penthouse was quiet. Claire and Hope were gone. Mrs. Grant handed him an envelope. Inside was a short note in Claire's handwriting. "She deserves peace, and you deserve a chance to make things right without us being your reason. We are staying at my friend's cottage outside the city. Do not come until you know what you truly want." Ethan stood in silence, the paper trembling in his hand. For the first time, the penthouse felt as empty as it had before she arrived, sterile, cold, echoing. That night, he sat in Hope's empty room, her drawings still taped to the wall. One showed the three of them holding hands beneath a rainbow, and underneath, the words, "My forever family." He whispered to himself, "You already are." Days passed. The media storm began to fade as other scandals took its place, but the ache in his chest did not. He cancelled meetings, withdrew from the city, and went to the foundation office where it all started. Instead of his assistants, he found boxes of donations for the children's program Claire had helped design. She had named it Open Hearts, and the sight of it made something inside him shift. He finally understood. It was never about saving face. It was about saving what mattered. That evening, he drove through the rain, the city lights blurring through the windshield until they faded into open fields. The road led him to a small cottage by the lake, the one she had mentioned in her letter. Inside, a warm light glowed. He stepped out of the car, heart pounding, every breath heavy with the fear that she would not open the door. But he knocked anyway. When it opened, Claire stood there, startled, Hope peeking from behind her leg. He looked at them both and said simply, "I am done pretending, Claire. I am not here to fix the past. I am here to ask if I can build a future with you, with her, for real this time." The rain fell harder, but she did not close the door. Hope ran forward, wrapping her small arms around his legs, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan Ward felt like he had finally come home. Claire stood frozen at the doorway, rainwater dripping from Ethan's coat onto the wooden porch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Hope clung to his leg, her small voice breaking the silence. "Daddy, are you staying?" Ethan bent down, his voice barely above a whisper. "If your mommy will let me." Claire's throat tightened. "You cannot just walk back in as if nothing happened." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know. But I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for a chance to prove that I mean it this time." The storm outside raged, wind whistling through the trees. Claire stepped aside without a word, allowing him in. The warmth of the small cottage hit him immediately, the faint scent of vanilla candles, a fire crackling in the hearth, Hope's drawings taped to the wall again. It was everything the penthouse had never been. Claire handed him a towel and spoke quietly. "I told Hope we were going to start over. I wanted her to see that sometimes walking away is the only way to protect yourself." Ethan looked at her, his voice rough. "And did it work?" "Maybe," she said softly. "But she still asks for you every night." He exhaled, emotion thick in his chest. "Claire, I lost everything the moment I lost your trust. The company, the board, all of it means nothing compared to this. She stared into the fire. Words are easy, Ethan. What about action? He stepped closer, pulling a small envelope from his jacket pocket. This is my action. I resigned from the company. I sold my shares to fund the foundation. It is called the Hope Foundation, now registered in her name and yours. Claire blinked, disbelief flickering across her face. You did what? You once told me children can feel lies, he said quietly. I do not want to live one anymore. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she reached out and took the envelope, her hands trembling. I do not know if we can go back, she whispered. Maybe we are not supposed to, Ethan replied. Maybe we are supposed to build something new. Hope yawned, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Mommy, can Daddy stay for story time? Claire looked at Ethan, and for the first time since the chaos began, she smiled, a small, fragile thing, but real. He can stay, she said softly. Ethan lifted Hope into his arms, and she nestled against him as he carried her to the couch. He sat down, Claire beside him, the firelight painting gold across their faces. Once upon a time, Ethan began, there was a little girl who taught two grown-ups how to love again. Hope giggled, her eyelids fluttering as sleep overtook her. Claire watched him, her heart heavy and light all at once. When the story ended, Ethan looked at her and said, I am not leaving again, unless you tell me to. She met his gaze, her voice barely a whisper. Then do not. The storm outside began to fade, replaced by the soft rhythm of rain against the glass, a sound that, for the first time, felt like peace. Days passed more quietly at the lake cottage, the rhythm of life simple and steady. Ethan Ward began helping with everyday things that once seemed foreign to him. He cooked breakfast, fixed the broken fence, and drove Hope to school in a weathered pickup truck instead of a black SUV. The world had grown smaller, but somehow, his heart had grown larger within it. Claire Bennett watched him from the kitchen window one morning as he played with Hope near the garden, their laughter echoing across the yard. It did not sound like the man she first met in the sterile hallway of St. Joseph's Hospital. It sounded like someone who had finally learned how to live. When he came inside, still dusty from the garden, Claire handed him a cup of coffee. You are terrible at farming, she teased. He smiled. You are not wrong. But Hope said the tomatoes needed my help. You just let her boss you around, Claire said with a soft laugh. She is 5 years old. And already more persuasive than most lawyers I know, Ethan replied. For a while, silence stretched between them, warm and comfortable. Then Claire spoke, her voice gentle. You know, the social worker called. They closed the case. The adoption is officially permanent. Ethan froze, the weight of her words sinking in. She is ours, he whispered. Claire nodded. She always was. That evening, they celebrated with a simple dinner, pasta, candles, and Hope's favorite chocolate cake. The child's laughter filled the small house as she made them both wear paper crowns she had crafted from construction paper. Mommy is the queen, Hope declared proudly. And Daddy is the king. Ethan chuckled. What about you? I am the boss, she said, crossing her tiny arms. Claire and Ethan both laughed until tears formed in their eyes. Later, after Hope had fallen asleep, Ethan stepped onto the porch, looking out at the lake bathed in moonlight. Claire joined him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. You did it, she said softly. You built something real. He turned to her, his voice low. Not alone. You gave me the reason. She looked at him for a long time, the night air cool around them. Ethan, when you showed up at my door, I told myself I would not let you in again. I was afraid. Of what? He asked. Of believing you could love us for real, she said honestly. After everything, I did not think you could. He reached for her hand, holding it gently. Then let me prove it. No contracts, no conditions, just a man who is finally ready to stay. She searched his eyes, and whatever hesitation lingered began to fade. "You already are staying," she whispered. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the sound of crickets blending with the faint rustle of trees. Then Ethan pulled something from his pocket, a familiar gold ring, the one from their courthouse wedding months ago. "This time," he said quietly, "I want it to mean something." Claire's breath caught. The moonlight glinted off the ring as he placed it in her palm. "I am not asking you to marry me again," he continued. "I am asking you to believe in what we already are." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her smile was steady. "Then yes," she said softly. "I believe." In the distance, thunder murmured once, then rolled away, leaving only peace behind. For the first time in a long while, Ethan Ward was not running from the storm. He was home within it. The following summer, sunlight spilled over the lake like melted gold, and the small cottage that once felt like a refuge had turned into a home. Hope ran barefoot across the grass, chasing butterflies while Claire Bennett prepared lemonade on the porch. Ethan Ward was setting up a small easel near the garden, his sleeves rolled up, his expression calm in a way it had never been in the city. The foundation had flourished quietly under his direction. Without corporate suits or board meetings, he had found purpose again, helping children who, like Hope, needed a second chance. Reporters still called sometimes, but he never answered. His life was no longer about being seen, it was about being present. Claire watched him from the porch, her heart swelling with quiet pride. "You look different," she said when he joined her, wiping his hands on a towel. "Do I?" he asked with a smile. "You look like a man who finally stopped running." He laughed softly. "Maybe I just needed the right place to stop." She handed him a glass of lemonade. "And the right people." Hope came running up, holding a small daisy crown she had made herself. "Mommy, Daddy, I made something." She placed it on Claire's head, then reached up and placed one on Ethan's. "Now you both match." Claire laughed, bending down to kiss her forehead. "You are the real boss here." Hope grinned proudly. "I know." As the afternoon faded into dusk, the three of them sat on the porch swing together, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle and rain. Ethan took Claire's hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Do you ever think about how strange it all was?" he asked. "A contract, a lie, and somehow it led us here." She smiled. "Maybe it was never really a lie. Maybe it was just the wrong beginning to the right story." He turned toward her, his gaze soft. "I like that version better." Hope leaned sleepily against them, her small hand resting over theirs. The quiet rhythm of her breathing filled the space between words. "Daddy," she murmured, half asleep, "will we always stay here?" Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "As long as you want, sweetheart." Claire looked out over the water, the reflection of the setting sun shimmering like fire across the waves. "It feels like forever," she whispered. "Then let it be," Ethan said, his arm wrapping gently around her shoulders. The first stars began to appear, flickering above the lake, tiny promises in the darkening sky. Ethan glanced at the gold ring on Claire's finger, the one that had once symbolized duty and now meant love. He smiled. "Do you remember what you said the night we signed the contract?" Claire raised an eyebrow. "Which part?" "You said children can feel lies." He looked toward Hope, asleep between them. "Then I think she must know this is real." Claire rested her head on his shoulder. "It is," she said softly. "It always was, even when we did not see it yet." The porch light flickered on, casting a soft glow over them. In the gentle hush of twilight, the world felt still, as if holding its breath for their happiness. The man who once tried to buy redemption had found something far greater, a home built not on guilt or paper promises, but on love that had finally learned to stay. And for Ethan Ward, Claire Bennett, and the little girl named Hope, forever had finally found its place.